welcome to Liberty Jane. Today I'm going to show you how to make shoes for your doll. On Pixie Fair, we have pre-cut shoe soles available for both 18-inch dolls and now for the new WellieWishers dolls. I'm excited to show you how to put together the no-sew Jane's pattern using the pre-cuts. Let's get started. The shoe pattern that we're going to work on is called the no-sew Jane's, and we have it for both 18-inch dolls and now for WellieWishers. This pair right here for 18-inch dolls is made using the Kalani Pixie Pack. And here we have a super tiny pair that we've made for the WellieWishers dolls. And here's a look at both shoes side by side, just so you can see how much smaller this is than the 18-inch size. First, you'll have to print out the pattern piece page and cut out the necessary pieces. When you're using pre-cuts, you don't need to cut out the sole shape of the pattern piece because you have those as foam and cardboard already cut out. And here's a quick close-up look at both sizes of the pre-cut side by side. The no-sew Janes have just 3 pattern pieces: the toe area, the part that wraps around the back of the heel, and then the piece of fabric that you would cut to cover the chipboard sole. The other great thing about the no-sew Janes is that they use trims that you can find pretty much anywhere. So here's an example of a trim out of the Josephine Pixie Pack. And the edges on this are nice and straight, and it's got a variety of colors and a woven kind of crocheted texture. So as long as the width of the trim is at least 2 inches for the 18-inch size and 1.5 inches for the smaller size, you can cut out and make shoes using trims just like this. Here we have all the pieces needed to make both the 18-inch and the smaller WellieWishers size. These down here are the chipboard, and up above we have the foam pieces. Then the pattern pieces on each side. This side over here is the larger 18-inch size, and this side over here is the smaller WellieWishers size. So we have trim, we have fabric to cover the insole, and we have a glue gun. We also need to have an iron ready and an ironing board nearby. To start, we're going to take the pattern piece for the insole, pin it to the 2 pieces of fabric. The fabric is wrong sides together here, so we'll have 2 soles that are mirror images of each other. Then we'll just cut this out. Once you have your insole pieces cut out, cut a few little inserts around the top curve and the heel, just about 1/4 inch in. It'll make it easier to overlap as we fold over the chipboard edge. Here we have the chipboard and the fabric. You're just going to place the fabric matching the toe curve over the chipboard, and you'll see on the back side we have a little bit of an overlap. You're just going to use the glue gun, apply glue, and then fold it over and press it down quickly. It'll dry quickly and it's hot, so be really careful when you press and touch on those areas. And then you'll just continue around the entire perimeter of the insole. When you're on the opposite side, make sure you're pulling the fabric really tight as you fold it over so that you have a really smooth surface on the inside of the shoe. And here we have the insole for the right side of the shoe. So you'll repeat this on the left side and then we'll move on. Now let's take the trim and the pattern pieces and we'll pin them on and cut them out. You'll notice here we have the toe piece pinned to the trim, and you want to be sure that you have the edge of the pattern piece right along the finished edge of the trim. We have one pinned right here. We're going to cut this out and then we're going to cut another one, the exact same pattern piece. Now we're going to take the remaining piece of trim and the pattern piece for the sides of the shoe and place it on here, and we'll cut out 2 pieces. Now with this one, you want to be sure that you notice this says the finished edge of the trim. So line the top of this pattern piece up with the finished edge of your trim. So you can see here, we're going to have the finished edge along the top, and then we're going to cut right through the center of this piece of trim. And this will start to unravel, which is fine. This part down here will be glued to the bottom of the shoe, which will keep it from unraveling. So now that we have all the pieces cut out, we can move on to our next step. The pattern uses a product called Steam-A-Seam, and this is a small piece that comes in the kit. It has paper on one side and a sticky surface that's like a glue on the other side. It's 1/4 inch wide, so it lines up perfectly with all the seam allowances that we have indicated in the pattern. So for the next step, we're going to take the side piece and a piece of the steam seam, and you want it to be the length of the side right here, and you can just tear it. So we have this, and it'll stick down if you press on it. We're going to do one for each side. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other side. We have both the left and the right shoe side pieces here on our small ironing board. The steam seam has been just pressed down onto the edges, but to activate the glue and to set it, we're going to need to press it with an iron, and you do it for just a few seconds. And then we'll do it down on the other side. Wait about 5 minutes for it to cool. Then you can peel off the paper backing, and be really careful to make sure that you're peeling off just the paper and that that glue residue remains on the trim. To make the shoe easier to slip off and on, it has a little piece of ribbon that folds over the back of the heel right here. So to apply that is super easy. We're just going to take our steam seam and our piece of ribbon and run it the entire length of the ribbon and tear it off. Then we'll press it down just to secure it to the ribbon. Now that we've allowed it to cool, we can peel this off. And then just simply fold your shoe piece in half so that you have center back. And just hold that with your finger. You're going to fold the ribbon right over center back. So we'll line it up like this. Make sure it extends about 1/4 of an inch above. And it folds right onto itself. So it's on the inside and the outside of the shoe. And then you press that down again to secure. Working with just the right shoe, we're going to take the toe piece and the side piece. So this right here is the finished side, and this right here is the finished top side of the shoe. So we're just going to overlap right over that sticky residue, which is 1/4 of an inch. So that's sticky enough that we can press it together with our fingers to hold it, and then we're going to set it and secure it with the iron. If you want to sew, you can at this point sew a simple straight stitch on top of this right here just for extra durability, but it's not necessary. Then you're going to take the other side of the shoe and fold it around and line it up with the opposite side of the toe piece. The same way, you have 1/4 inch overlap, it'll stick together, and it should fold just out of the way so that you can press it down. So I've pressed this for about 8 to 10 seconds, and then I'm going to give it a few minutes and we'll let it cool. And while it's cooling, we can work on the other shoe. For added durability, we're going to take a piece of ribbon that already has the steam seam applied to one side, and we're going to put it right on the inside where the side of the shoe is joining the toe. So it'll cover this inside seam and keep it from pulling apart. And then we'll press this down to secure the glue. Now that we have both the left and the right side shoes ready, we're going to assemble the rest of the shoe. Now we're going to take the right side insole and the right side piece of foam and one of the shoes, which will now make the right shoe. The ribbon that you applied to the back of the side piece is marking center back. We're going to take the insole and place it in the shoe upside down, putting the ribbon right at center back. And right here will be the first part that you glue down and press over. We'll mark center back, and then we'll mark center front at the toe and glue these two areas first, and then we'll continue around the outside edge. Being sure that you only overlap 3/8 of an inch of this trim over to the bottom of the shoe, and you want to make sure that it's even all the way around. For our final step, we're going to glue the foam to the base of the shoe. So you want to make sure that you line up the curve of the sole with the curve of the foam and make sure it's pointed in the right direction. We're going to glue it right to the bottom. So we'll add a piece of glue to the center, push the foam on, and then we'll squeeze the glue in around the sides to secure it. And it'll sandwich that trim piece right in between the two layers. So the cardboard is on the inside and the foam is down on the bottom. Then for the final step, we're going to take a piece of trim and glue it around the perimeter of the sole. It'll cover this area where the fabric is meeting the foam. So we'll take a piece of trim, and this is the trim that's included in the kit, but you can use any trim that's 1/4 inch wide, and it can be flat or braided. To start gluing the trim to the shoe, I recommend that you have your seam be at the inner arch. So for this shoe, that would be right here, and we'll start with a dab of glue and we'll press this down. As we start to glue, I'm going to press this down right here because this unravels a lot. So I'll let this dry a little and I'll come in and trim this off with my scissors. And then I'll have a much cleaner edge to match up the two edges when I get around with the trim all the way around. And then we'll carefully go around the entire edge. Now, as I get to this side and I can see where this is going to match up, I'm going to put some glue on my trim. You could also use something like fray check to just sort of keep this really solid so that as I cut this, it doesn't unravel. I'm just dabbing a little bit on here and carefully smoothing it out with the glue gun. And I'll just wait a few minutes for it to dry. Once it dries, I can just cut right into that and the trim won't unravel. Adding the trim to this part of the shoe actually gives it extra durability and helps to connect the two pieces together so your shoe's less likely to fall apart. I'm just going to put in some extra glue right in here, and we'll really make sure that we glue those two edges together, and then after that dries, I'll come back like I did the first time and trim off this extra part. It's a little bit too long. And here we have the finished pair of no-sew Janes for 18-inch dolls. I have a few quick things I'm going to show you with the smaller WellieWisher size that varies a little bit from the 18-inch pattern. First, you'll notice that the toe piece is a lot smaller. So on a 2-inch piece of trim, you just want to make sure that you have the bottom edge lined up with the straight edge of the trim. Now, for the WellieWisher size, it's a lot smaller. So you can see here we have the crocheted part made from the trim, assembled the same way, just smaller. And then we have the shoe sole. And these shoe soles are a very definite right and left foot. They're a lot easier to tell apart than the 18-inch size. So you want to make sure that you have the right side and the left side for all the pieces. Now when you're assembling this smaller shoe, you're going to use the piece of chipboard that's covered with fabric, and then for the bottom of the shoe we're going to use a second piece of chipboard and a very thin 2mm piece of foam. The 6mm foam we felt was just a little bit too thick for this scale of doll shoe. Here we have the base of this shoe all glued down, and you can see it from the top. It looks the same as the 18-inch size, just smaller. Now we're going to take the other piece of chipboard and glue it to the base, just like this. Now that we have the second layer of the base glued onto this shoe, you can see here it's sandwiched together pretty tightly. We'll add some glue and glue the foam layer on top of this. And again, make sure that you have your toe curve and your inside arch all lined up. Now that we have the foam layer and the chipboard glued to the bottom of the shoe, you can see here how those two layers stack on top of each other. We're going to take the trim piece to cover this seam. Then, like the 18-inch size, we'll start from the inside arch and work our way all the way around. Make sure as you're applying the trim that you're pulling it tightly and then pressing it firmly into the glue. It'll help it really stick to the shoe and have a nice flat smooth look. And then once that dries right there, I'll clip that back with a pair of scissors so it has a nice even connection. And here we have a finished no-sew Jane for a WellieWisher doll.